Now in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make these cute little Christmas trees. I'm going to be using mine to put on the front of a Christmas jumper. I don't want to go and buy any old jumper, I'm just going to make my own this year. So I'm going to be using cotton and a 3mm hook. Obviously you're going to need your scissors and your needle just to sew in the ends. But as you can see, they look like pretty leaves, and I'm just going to put pom-poms on the top once it's finished, and that's the back of it. So let's get started. Now to begin with, I'm just going to make a slip knot, and we're going to chain 19 for this one. There we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, whoops, and 19. There we go. Now we're going to work our way back along, and we're going to be doing double crochets for this first one. Now you want to make sure your double crochets are the same length, so we need to go into the third chain from the hook. So we have got 1, 2, 3. We're going to pop in here. So we've yarned over. We're going to pull up a yarn. Now you want them fairly long, otherwise the bottom's all going to drag in. So you pull through 2 and you pull through 2. So we're doing them in 2 clusters. So our first bit that we've used our chain of 3 at the end is 1, and that's our second one. And every time you move on, you're going to chain 1. We're going to yarn over. We're going to miss this next stitch, and we're going to go in the following stitch. And this is where you're going to put 2. So we don't want them too tight, so we're making them loose. So I generally go in the top of the chain for the first one, and then when I do the second one I go nearer the bottom. Otherwise what happens is you're just going to be left with a big gaping hole there. So I'm in the same one but in the bottom section of it. You'll see what I mean in a second. Like so. So it's not pulling as much as it would do if you just went in the top of it. Now we're going to move on. So we chain 1, we're going to miss a stitch, and we're going to go in the next stitch. So this is the top section and that is the bottom section. So I'll put my first one in the top, give it a bit of a tug to keep them loose, yarn over again, and we're going to go in the bottom section here. Give it a little bit of a tug and pull through. So as you can see, we're building up our 2 double crochets and we're missing a stitch. Yarn over and pull through. So we're doing a chain 1 as we move on to the next one. We can see this is our next stitch, so we're going to go in this one. Yarn over and into the bottom section. Give it a tug. So if you carry on all the way to the end, I will meet you there. Now I've gone all the way to the end, and as you can see we've now got 9 clusters of 2. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we're going to be working through these posts on the way back. So we need to chain 1 because we're going to be turning onto the next row. And then we're going to yarn over. We're going to miss these first 2 cluster and we're going to go into the next one. So we're going to go under the first one. And that's the one that we're going to be working in. So it is easy if you turn your work in half and just have that one chain of 2, your double crochet, on show, so it doesn't make you want to go in any of the others. And we're going to do 5 double crochets through there. So that is our first one. 2, 3, 4 and 5 is our last one. I know exactly where I'm going because I've held all the other bits out of the way, so it can only go through that post. We've got to the bottom of that one. I'm going to chain 1 and then we're going to turn our work and we're going to find the other half of that. So it's easy if I open it up and show you. So this is what we've got so far. There's the other half of that chain of 2, the double crochet on that section. We want to work in that one now. So I'm just going to have that one visible and put my fingers under so I don't get confused. We're going to yarn over and we're going to do 5 double crochets up the side of that one. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So as you can see, we've got our first, called a crocodile stitch, made, and then we need to anchor that in place on this next section of 2. So it doesn't matter which one you want to go into, whether it be this one or this one. I'll aim for the second one, and we're just going to do a slip stitch, and that's going to hold that end down. And then because we're going over to this next one now, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to get this first bar showing. So we've yarned over. I can see this is my first bar here, and I'm going to hold everything else out of the way, and I'm going to go through and do my 5 double crochets on that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 1 at the bottom, turn our work around, and we're going to go down the other side of the group of 2. When you're happy that you've got that bar in your hand, we can do 5 double crochets going back up the other side. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and again open it out. This is our next group of 2, so I'm going to go in the top just to anchor it in with a slip stitch. Chain 1 to go on to our next one. So if you want to carry on to the end, you're going to do another crocodile stitch here and 1 here, and I'll meet you at the end to show you the next turn. Now I've got to the end. I'm just going to secure it with my slip stitch, so I'm going to go in the top of this stitch here and just slip it through, and then we need to make the foundation row on the next row. And because I want 2 rows of 4 and then 2 rows of 3 and 2 and 1, we're going to do exactly the same as we did in the beginning. So I'm going to chain 2, turn my work, and I'm going to go straight back in that same stitch and do another double crochet. I didn't like that. Let's go back in. That's better. That's our first cluster of double crochet, so I'm going to chain 1 to move on, and then you're going to go into this leaf area at the back. So you just find a stitch at the top and do 2 double crochets into there, chain 1 to move on, and then the next section is this. You can see the double crochet posts at the back. We're just going to go in through the top of there in that stitch, and again do another 2. Chain 1 to move on. Then we're back to this leaf section, so go through the top of that one. Chain 1 to move on. We're on the post section again, so through that top stitch there. Chain 1. Back to our leaf. Whoops, let's find the top one here. Chain 1, back in this one here. Chain 1, 2 more sets to do. That's 1 set, chain 1, and this is our last one here. You can see our 2 posts at the end, 1 here and 1 here, so we're going to go up through that top stitch there. Just make sure I get the back one to it. I can't see because my yarn's in front. There we go, 2 lots. So we have now got the foundation chain for the next row of leaves. So I'm going to chain 1 to turn. We're going to ignore again this first section here, yarn over, and we're going to go up this first post. Get that, so that's all that's on view, so you don't get confused. And we're going to do our 5 double crochets. 3, 4, 5, chain 1 because we're at the bottom, and we're going to work our way back around this other side. So it's this post here we need, so we'll get that one visible, and we're going to go through there and do our chain. Oops, lost my chain over. There we go. 5 double crochets going up this side. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So our last one, number 5, and we're going to secure it on this next group of 2 with our slip stitch there. There we have it. So if you want to carry on to the end, I'll meet you at the end. So I've just finished the second row, and we are going to go up to do our foundation chain on the next one. So I need to secure this in the end here with a slip stitch, and this one's going to be slightly different. I'm just going to chain 1. We're not going to do our double crochet to begin with on this one because we need to go in for 3 leaves now. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a double crochet straight into the top of this first, I'll call this the leaf because that's obviously what it is the back of. We're going to go straight into the back of that one and do our 2 double crochets. That's 1 and 2, chain 1 because we're moving on, and again we're going to go into the top of our 2 posts, yarn over, do our 2 double crochets into the top of that one. So as you go up, it's going to get smaller. Top of our leaf, chain 1 to move on, and now we're on the top of our posts. Chain 1, top of the leaf, chain 1, top of our posts. Chain 1, and this is going to be our last one here, the top of the leaf. Because we don't want to be going right to the end, otherwise we're going to continue going up straight. Chain 1 to turn, and as you can see now we are going to be missing this one, and we're going to be doing 1 miss 1 miss 1. So these are where our leaves are going to be in between. So we're just going to yarn over, ignore your first cluster and go into your second one, and we're going to repeat the whole thing, the 5 double crochets going down, chain 1 at the bottom and go up the other side. 3, whoops, 4, 5, chain 1 to do your turning, and we're going to come up this other side here. Just have that on show so you don't put your hook anywhere that you shouldn't be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in this next group of 2 we're just going to anchor it down with a slip stitch. Chain 1 because we're moving on, and as you can see it fits beautifully between the row below. So if you want to carry on, we've got 2 more to do on this row and I'll meet you at the end. Okay, so I've got to the end of my row. I'm just going to anchor it down in this corner here with a slip stitch. And because we're going to do exactly the same on the row above, we do need to chain our 2 because we need that cluster of 2 at the beginning. So we're going to yarn over, go straight back in there and do another one. Chain 1 to move on. And this is where we're going to go in our leaf. We're going to the top of that one. Chain 1 to move on the top of our posts. Chain 1 to move on. We're going to go back to the top of the next leaf. You can see it's a leaf because it's very unique. Chain 1 to move on. We're going to go in the top of the posts. Chain 1 to move on, and this is the top of our leaf. Chain 1, and we do need to go in the top of these posts because we're doing exactly the same as the row below. Let's get into the top of that one. And this is where we chain 1 and turn our work. So as you can see, we are now going to ignore this first section. We're going to go into this one, ignore that one because that's where you chain you connect it with your slip stitch. We're going to work on this one, that's the next leaf, slip stitch into that one, and again do your leaf on that one. So we're going to yarn over, find your first post, make sure that's the only one that you can feel. We're going to do again your 5 double crochets going up. This is number 5, and then we've got to chain 1 at the end. Turn your work to go up this other side here. Make sure you're just holding that bit and carry on with your 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our leaf, and we're going to go anywhere at the top of here with a slip stitch, chain 1 onto your next one. So I will meet you again at the end. Okay, second row of just 3s, and we are going to secure it with a slip stitch in this end one here. Chain 1 to turn, and because we're going to be losing a leaf this time, we're not going to be doing our first row of 2 right at the end here. We're going to yarn over and we're going to go through the top of the leaf. That's where we're going to be starting with our clusters of 2. So we've got 1, 2, chain 1 to move on. We're going to go at the top of our posts, cluster of 2. Chain 1. Top of our leaf, our cluster of 2 double crochets, chain 1 to move on, top of our posts. Oh, it's gone through too many. That's it. chain one to move on, and the last one is going to be our leaf because we're losing one of them on this row. Chain one to turn. So we're going to ignore this first group of 2 we've just done, and we're going to go under this next lot. So we're going to end up with 2 leaves on this round. That's 5. Chain one to turn. And we're going up this other side here. Just make sure that's all you've got visible. And you can just feel where you're going. I'm going to anchor it down on this next group of 2 double crochets with a slip stitch. Chain one, we're moving on to the next one, which is this one here. Hold it in place so you can feel what you're doing. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain one, turn your work. We're coming up the last side now, which is this one here. Again, hold it so that you can feel where you're going through. You don't need to see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to anchor it down on this last groups of 2. There's that row. So we're just going to repeat that one again because we're doing exactly the same as the row before. We do need to chain 2. That is your first cluster of your double crochets. I'm going to go straight back in there and do another double crochet. Chain 1 to move on. I'm going to go in the top of the leaf. Chain 1. Top of the group of 2. Those are on your bars. Chain 1. Top of the leaf. Chain 1. Because we're repeating the row below, we do need to do these 2 on the end. Just chain 1 to turn our work, and then you're going to work into these 2 sections here. So I'll let you carry on and I'll meet you at the end of that row. Okay, that's the second row of 2 finished. Just going to secure it now on this end one with my slip stitch. And we're going up to the next row. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn. We're going to ignore this first section here because we need to go to 1 leaf now, not 2. So we're going to go straight into the top of this one. Do our cluster of 2 double crochets, chain 1, go over to the post in the top of that one, chain 1, and then we're going to go over to the top of this leaf. So we're just going to need those 3. We're going to chain 1 to turn. And we're going to go straight in and do this last leaf in the middle here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 1, turn our work. back up the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We need to secure it on those last 2 posts here with a slip stitch. We're going to do the same again at the top, so we're going to chain 2 because we're repeating the row below. Going to go down and do another half double crochet at the end there, chain 1 to move on. We're going to go in the top of this post here, so that's that last tier finished. I'm going to slip stitch to hold it in the end one, chain 1 to turn, and then we're just going to go into the top of this post here. This is the beginning of our cluster of 2. Oh, missed that one out. There we go. Chain 1 to move on. We're going to go into the top of the leaf, our cluster of 2, chain 1 to move on, and then we're going to go into the top of this post here. This is going to be our last leaf now, so we're going to chain 1 and turn, ignore these first and last. We're going to go straight into that middle section. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 1 to turn. We're coming up this other side here. One, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and the last thing we need to do is to anchor it down with our slip stitch. So here's our last chain of 2, cluster of 2 rather, and we're going to cut that end off. And there we have it. Sew the ends in a moment, but we need to finish it off with our stem at the bottom, this piece here. So we turn our work so it's facing you, and then we find the center, which is between these 2 here, and as you look in there we've got that cluster of 2. So that one is going to act as your, you need 5 double crochets going along, so that's going to be number 3, number 2, and this is going to be number 1. So we're going to go through there, lift up our yarn and pull it through, just chain 1, and then we're going to go straight back into that one and do a double crochet. So straight back in there. That's our first stitch. As we do it, we're going to be hiding this behind, so there's no sewing in of that one. We're going to find our next stitch here, go through, double crochet. That's 2. Then we know that this one is our center one, so we're going to go through there. That's 3. Find the next one. 4. And then the last one's here. It's number 5. Make sure the yarn's over. So far we've got our 5 double crochets. I'm going to chain 1 to turn. we're going to do 2 rows of just single crochets to pull it all in tight. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and our last one's here, 5, chain 1 to turn, and work your way back down for your last row of single crochets all the way along. 2, 3, 4, and that one's our number 5. Cut that off. There is our tree, and I'm just going to sew these ends in. So I generally just go back through that one and then hide it behind so it doesn't lose its shape. So I'm going to go behind these single crochets here. Don't pull it too tight, otherwise it will bring the end in. You don't want that. That's that one, and then I'm just going to miss the first one that I've done last and work my way through some others to come back the other way. That's that one. This one we know we've done because we've already sewn it in on the previous row, but I'm just going to go back a couple, miss that first one and pop it back like so. Bring that one back in, and then I tend to go down one of the backs of the leaves because they've got more room for hiding it. So I'll go down that one, and then this top one is our last one to do. Again, I'm going to feed it along and go down that leaf like so. So that is our finished tree, ready to put as a decoration. It could be a bunting that you could string it along, gift tags. I'm going to use mine, like I said, on the front of a jumper, so I will show you how to do the pom-pom on the top. But first things first, we do need to block them so that it keeps them laying nice and flat. So that's our next stage. Okay, so I've got one ready on my blocking board, and I'll just show you how I've done it. So I've literally gone through the top leaf here because you've got a lot of giveaway up there, and find your hole where you're going to pop it. So I'll pop that one in there. And then I'm going to pull down at the bottom and find the chain between the double crochets because they're quite large, and find a hole to pop that one in. And then I'm going to go through these bottom row of leaves again, go through where you've got your join in the middle because it's a nice big loop, and pop it down. And the same on this one, through the center. So there we have our work ready for blocking. Now with blocking, I generally just wet it, make it very wet, and leave it there to dry, and it will keep all of these in place for whatever you want to, what purpose you want to use it for. So I have my bottle of water, and it's simply just spray them like that, and that will dry up, and you'll see the difference afterwards, what it ends up like. And just carry on. If you want to add more to it, you can literally feed them down and layer them up. It's the same as you would do blocking your granny squares. If you haven't got a blocking board, don't worry, you can use pins on maybe an ironing board or a cork mat, or a lump of foam, anything that's just going to hold it in place. You don't need to buy any fancy stuff. And obviously each time you do one, you wet it, make sure it's gone in the wall, and keep adding it. And these will be dry later today, maybe tomorrow. So that's the blocking covered. I will now do the pom-pom. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make this pom-pom. We have got pom-pom makers, but if you don't have one, don't worry. I'm going to be showing you how to make a pom-pom with a fork. So we get a length of our yarn and that goes on the fork. I'm using a cake fork to make a smaller pom-pom, but you can obviously make them bigger with a normal size fork. We get our yarn and we're going to wrap it around our fork, and it depends how full you want your pom-pom. So I'm going to go for 60. I've got 60 times around, and we're just going to snip that bit there. And this is where we pull the yarn back up through, and we're going to tie a knot in this bit. I'm going to pull it off, make sure that's quite central, and give it a really good tug. This is where you need fingers all over the place to be able to tie another knot in it to keep it secure. And I'm going to go for the third one. Now we need to hang on to these bits of yarn because that's how we're going to sew it onto your tree. And now you need to work your way around the edges and just snip. Doesn't have to be precise because we are going to be trimming it to make it smaller. Now this is where you need to go around and make sure you haven't missed any. There's one there. So I think that's all of them. We're going to fluff it up. It's more like a pine cone at the moment, so we need to work on that, and we're going to trim it round. Just go around cutting to make it into a nice circular shape. I forgot one there as well. Look, that's still got a loop on it. I'm going to leave that one as it is for now, and I'm going to show you one that I can do on the pom-pom maker so we can compare them. Okay, so there are various different pom-poms out there on the market. This is one that I've just found, so we are literally going to do the same sort of thing. As you can see, we've got an indent here. That is the level that you need to fill it with. So we're just going to keep wrapping our yarn around. And if you go too full, it will not let you close it. Okay, so I'm happy with that one, and that one closes nicely. So now I'm going to go in with this one. So I'm going to work my way back down here. And we're going to close that one up too. Cut this yarn off. I'm going to need a bit again to go through to tie it off in a second, but we need to cut it first on this one. So we're going to work our way around like we did on the other one, just cutting our way. This one will hold it in place and then you put the yarn through at the end. And these pom-pom makers come in all different sizes. Just make sure they're all clicked. And then we insert the yarn through the centre and tie a knot. Again, let's do 3 knots on this one. And then with this device, it allows you to pull it off. So we'll undo that one and that one, and then you feed it out like so. So again, looks fairly simple. Looks quite like the other one. And you will have to trim. Let's get these long bits off first. So I'll carry on trimming this one and then I'll compare the two for you. Okay, so as you can see, we have got Pom Pom with a pom-pom maker versus Pom Pom with a fork. Doesn't look a lot of difference. Obviously the sizing, it depends how big you want them. And that's all I wanted, was a little one to go on the top of my Christmas tree. So either one of those would do just fine. And then you're literally just going to tack it through so that it sits on that top shell. So there we have it. I hope you liked the video. Please maybe like, subscribe, and I'll pop another one up.